Hey everybody, Michael Martin. Thanks for being here. So I got a really good question the other day. I was talking with somebody on a walk in New York, and they said, like, when did you know? You tell everybody it's like 4.5 years, but when did you actually know? And what were you feeling? Like, how did you put all of that together? And that was a really good question because I kind of forget a lot of stuff. I've been around for a while. So I was thinking, like, I was comparing myself to other people who I was working with, right? Because I was in a big branch office. And when you see other people who are profitable, it's hard not to have envy, because there's a fine line between envy and admiration, right? So spiritually, you have to grow to celebrate everybody's success. So today, like whether someone's scalping very well or whether they're taking very big positions home and or using margin, which are kind of on different ends of the spectrum, I celebrate all of it because that those people have found out the combination that works best for them. And I'm never trying to convert people, from one thing to the other. The goal is to become the best at who you are. Grow as a person, grow as a trader. Those two things can kind of happen all at once. So for me, I had a spiritual awakening over that entire period of time too, to celebrate everybody's success, because I knew from having other success in my life over time, I was going to become successful. It was just a matter of time. I didn't know how it was going to happen for me. And that's the key part of setting goals. Like when we do the coaching part and we set goals, well, Mike, I have to set a goal, but I don't know how to do it. That's not the point. Whatever it is that you need to learn, you're going to learn it because it's critical. It's mission critical. So I knew that I was going to learn and come into the knowledge that I needed to learn. Little did I know that it was really more about emotional intelligence, my own psychology. And, that's upwards of 90% of it, because there's only so many ways to actually buy a security to sell it short. And then you get to choose what your risk unit is. So, and then I started thinking, like, okay, compounded returns, commissions were an issue, but I could see that my peers were doing well and that it was just a matter of time for me to figure out what was working for me. Now, let's look at a case study. In the middle of all of that, there were times when my peers, there's about 70 people in the office, and only probably maybe 20, 25 of them were very, very active in trading, because commissions were always an issue for all of us, even though we had a little bit of a discount at the firm. So I just kind of figured, like, just like fruits and vegetables are in season, so are certain trading strategies, right? There's not like a man for all seasons, right? As far as trading is concerned. Now, marketers will tell you that their way of doing things works all the time. And it may work that way for them because they have a unique skill, but that doesn't mean that you're going to be able to look over their shoulder and replicate exactly what they did, no matter where they work, no matter whether they're verified or not, regardless of the time frame and regardless of the asset class. That's, to me, is an absolute truth. I know a lot of people. I know a lot of guitar players. My guitar teacher played for Miles Davis. If I stopped everything else in my world, trading, coaching, teaching, fathering, jujitsu, painting, and I woodshedded with my instrument 18 hours a day, which wouldn't be healthy really to do anything 18 hours a day, I will never get to his level of ability. No chance. The same way that Billy Corgan, who was from the Smashing Pumpkins, right? I'm a zero. Was over visiting 5150, which was the home-built studio for Edward Van Halen, and he picked up the Frankenstrat, and he said, "Hey, would you mind if I took a spin on this thing?" It's that kind of guitar. You've probably all seen it. It was on the cover of the first record. He repainted that white and black one, and that kind of became the first of several that he built because he couldn't get the sound that he wanted. And the first thing he said is like, "Where's your fuzz box? Where's your distortion?" He's like, "I don't have it." So he started to play it, and he realized, like, this guitar doesn't sound, when I'm playing it, doesn't sound anything like this same guitar through the same amp and head when Edward plays it. And the reason is because Edward built it for himself, for his own style, for his own right and left hand technique and force and all this and that. And I think trading is very, very similar. Swing trading, for example, and shorter term trading requires a certain feel. Everyone's going to bring their own sense of feel to trading in that regard. So it's very difficult to replicate exactly the way someone else is doing it, even if they show it and sell it to you, or you're standing over the shoulder, looking over the shoulder. And so when I had that realization, it was a huge sigh of relief, because now I realized, like, it's not just 1 and 1 equals 2. For some people, 1 and 1 is 2.2. For some people, 1 and 1 is, 1.8. And both styles, right? Or let me say it this way. You are the niche. You are the trading style. All right. So I started to look at the whole thing very, very differently. Now, this wasn't overnight. It wasn't over a certain walk through Literary Row, Poets Walk in Central Park. It was not over a coffee or after a deep conversation, with Ed or Michael or, Peter Borsch or any of those folks, Victor. It was just through the persistence and the determination of learning a little bit every day, mostly about myself. I realized, because once I was at the brokerage firm, I had access to everything that I needed. I had real-time quotes. There was a basic charting package, certainly nothing like what you see today, but you could see technical analysis and charts. And there was written material almost every day on both fundamental research from CFAs and legendary CMT type technical analysts, including like Luis Yamada and Alan Shaw. And so I kind of had the best of all of it. Then I had the ability to pick up the phone and call the traders and the market makers as well. So I had that going for me, that education. So I realized, like, this was really something for me to make my own. And that was what I was celebrating. I stopped chasing other people's performance. I stopped chasing their way of doing things. I looked at it and said, okay, I like lavender, and it wouldn't look good with this suit. Maybe it would look good with another pairing or something like that. And that's kind of how I looked at how people traded, like the way they got into things, where they manage their risk, how do they manage their risk. So I kind of mixed and matched and said, okay, Baskin-Robbins has 31 flavors. I'm going to go there primarily for chocolate and peanut butter, maybe pralines and cream, and all the other ones are good. If you're Baskin-Robbins, I don't particularly care about, most of them, but I can take little bits and pieces. Maybe I can use some of them in combo. Now, I don't really actually do that in real life, but that's when you think of it in terms of trading analogy. I could see, like, how did so-and-so get into a trade? A good friend of mine, he actually had worked at Hayden Stone. He's since passed away. He's a great guy. Used to go to his house. He lived on, like, I want to say 68th and Central Park West. So we used to go to his house. He had this monster, like 20 by 20 picture window, and we could watch the Thanksgiving Day parade kind of go down on the street every year. Great old guy, told me a lot of stories, taught me really a lot of great things, how to trade. We went to a bunch of Giant games. He had season tickets. Good old guy, really taught me a lot. And that's where the light bulb went off, that I had to really be myself and have the courage to be myself, which also means I have to have the courage to make my best shot, keep records of what happens. Now, the journaling included, why did I get into the trade? And a full complement. I wish I still had those notebooks, because they were very detailed. Like, what was I thinking? What was I feeling? And why was I doing it? Was I buying it because someone else in the firm liked it? Or did I actually have conviction on it based upon my rules, which were separate, and also had my rules have these Bose Quiet Comfort. Actually, I have a pair of Bose Quiet Comfort, not here though, on the other desk, to block out the noise and what everyone else is speaking and kind of be my own man, right? Because that's when I think you're starting on the path, because you have to take the responsibility of what it is that you're doing when you're buying and selling securities. Why? How is it on your list? How did you, a good exercise to do is if you look back over, say, the past 12 months and look at what was the origination. For some of you, you might have a bona fide scanner, right? But for others, you may have, you might be listening in social media. You might have certain people that you follow. Like, I don't really care what it is. It doesn't matter to me, because I don't have any judgment. It's all legitimate. But you can reverse engineer that and say, okay, here are if I rank my biggest winner all the way down to lower winners, smaller winners, to the smaller losers to the biggest loser at the bottom, you can go back and say, okay, where was the source of this? Was it purely systematic? Am I a discretionary chart reader? Like, how do I find my names and then reverse engineer it? Like, I had to start facing the music with all of that. Like, why was I putting on these trades? Because if you think like, oh, you're just doing it to make the money, there's more to it than that. There's validation, especially for guys. Right. Right. Like, do you want to be a cop? Or do you want to look like a cop? Notice that, figure out the movie reference. So, what is that for you? What is your why, your emotional why? I know some of you probably want to make money. Maybe you want to be in the community. Maybe you want to say that you're traders. It's all okay, right? There's no real wrong answer. But knowing that truth is enormously powerful, especially if you're an insecure person. Most of the guys that I speak with, they're not peacocking, but they put on a big front about how confident they are. But when I speak with them, they ain't so confident. But I'm safe guy. Why? I'm in LA. I'm not in London, Tokyo, Sao Paulo, Hong Kong, New York City, whatever, where you might see me speaking with your peers or otherwise. I'm very dislocated from everybody. So I'm kind of a safe shoulder to cry on and speak to. So I hear a lot, and what I find is that most people, even if they have a lot of wealth and or a lot of assets under management, they aren't as confident as you might think. So for you, you might consider, just being completely honest with yourself when you're going through that iteration. That's one thing that I definitely had an edge on growing up as a person. I always had a very strong inner voice. That's why when I was with a friend of mine, Dorian, and he's a musician. We were talking about maybe doing it all came up from his wife was teaching a yoga class, and I was just wondering, like, when we all come in off the streets in LA, the traffic is bad, you want to kill everybody, and you're trying to get into like, hero pose or child's pose or something to kind of help make the transition from life on the street in the world to being and having kind of some type of solemn, very quiet moment in yoga as you're transitioning into your practice. We kind of talked like, I wonder what the conversations that people are having in their head in those first few minutes. And he said, yeah, it's like, I think he said the inner voice of yoga. And I always had a strong inner voice as a person. And so it hit me like right then and there, like that's the title of the book, long before I even reached out to anyone at the two publishers that I cold emailed. Anyway, so I think the more you can be honest with yourself as to what you're doing it for, right? As like, don't do it because you want to overcome the aggravation. Think about it as like, this is a life's journey and it's never going to end. It's kind of like martial arts. They say black belt is the beginning. Now, when I was a white belt and then getting my colored belts, I was like, I don't know my ass from a hole in the ground. How am I supposed to learn any of this stuff? And trust me when I tell you, I was learning, I'm a beginner. I don't know anything because there's a counter to everything you learn. So when you're learning the basics, you're kind of just learning how to move on the mat, how to develop your mat endurance, which is different cardio than running endurance. How do you put your weight into people? And they say that, black belt is the actual beginning. And I can understand it now. I didn't then. But your journey as a trader is kind of something similar, is that you want to get to a 0 point in your life where, you see your setup, you put on your trade, you're powerless over the outcome, but you know exactly what to do. Enter, add risk, and remove risk. That's pretty much all it is. What are the criteria or the criterion, if there's just one, for you? Because some people just say, like, if it's making a new weekly high, I'm in. That's it. And I have the same diet of risk. Doesn't matter what the instrument is, but here's my risk unit. I'm buying a new weekly high. One way to do it. And then manage risk accordingly. Then you have to figure like, okay, should I have more? My position sizing at the beginning is set up in such a way that it's I'll make enough money if it goes up, but if I'm wrong several times in a row, which is going to happen and probably happen frequently, I'm not going to fall to pieces because I have drawdown. So you figure out your initial risk unit for the criteria, then also measure like, okay, do I add? because then if it really goes, I don't want to have regrets, right? Because regret can find its way into your trading as well. So I had to process all those feelings of like, I don't want to not just chase something that's moved away. I don't want to jump in on the action and chase something because my good buddy is up 4% on the week and I'm coming out of a 1% or drawdown, or I'm flat, or my performance is not, you know, as consistent, or it's not. The bigger numbers don't always mean better. It just means sometimes the person's lucky, they're in the right place at the right time, or in the majority of cases, it's because they're trading bigger. They have bigger positions on. They have more play money. I didn't have play money, so my stops were much more tight. I never wore tights to the office. I always just wore them at home. So that realization came, probably in that last year, that 6-month window of time where the light bulbs were kind of going off, because I realized like a lot of things in life, trading is a process. It's not like a thing that you can go buy and say, "Oh, I got it." I got my mug, my coffee mug, or got my flash. It's not really something that you're gonna buy. The whole process is really something you have to achieve. And there's so many mixed parts to mix and match. The goal for you is to find which of those, when you look at all those attributes or characteristics of your trading model, whether it's purely systematic and regimented to a highly disciplined form of discretionary chart reading, all of those parts are mixed and matched to kind of give you a combination / a feeling tone that's going to move your P&L. And your goal is to be comfortable with that emotionally and financially. And that's hard to do with paper trading or these funding accounts, because there's not real money there. And the real money is stuff that could change your life, because if you lose the money, you're absent the cash, and it's hard to sometimes earn it back. I know that all too well, at least from when I started. And then, like, when you start to make money, you realize, like, oh my gosh, I used to make, X amount of dollars working as a as a caddy or as a waiter, and now I've just made that in one day. Let me reconstruct all of this to see how I got here, and what part of that can I systematize so that I can replicate it day after day after day, right? Because I know I'm going to take winners. I know I'm going to take my losers too. The goal is to just follow the process and kind of stay out of the results. I also let go of the need to have, like, what you would recall, or what some of you might call like a green day. I don't need to have a green day every day. And that too was like Atlas shrugging. Um, I used to think like, okay, $1 million a year. It's, whatever, that's 4K over 250 trading days. Then you break it down by position size and say, okay, I have this many shares at this price. If it moved this percent, blah, blah, blah. You start to think like, when you're broke and you're like, I don't have enough money to get there. But you realize that when you see some of the moves in the marketplace, if you could be there with some risk on, that will grow your account, and then things start to compound, and you say, you know what, it's not that far off. It's totally doable. I just have to stay consistent, and I can't get nuts. And I don't want to be like, okay, I remember when I got to, like, it was probably like 800K in my own money. I was like, I'm only 25% away from hitting the $1 million mark. What do you think I did? I started pressing, which doesn't really work in life. So after losing ample money, you're like, okay, idiot, just stop and do your own thing for a while. Stick to what had gotten you there in the first place, because the goal is like to be patient. And what are the feelings that you have to feel, when you're trying to hit a goal? It's within reach now, but the market isn't amenable for your trading style. That's a bad combo. And I had to learn them a sense of maturity to say, okay, there's times to sit on your hands. It's life on life's terms. You don't get to, you can put on whatever size you want, but at the end of the day, there has to be a bona fide reason why you would do that. That's consistent with what the parameters are. So then you kind of ease into that and say, like, okay, The sun's going to rise tomorrow. The sun's going to set. I just have to follow my rules. The trades will come as they come, and have that level of maturity, um, because you could push things too far. So again, this kind of came up from a question where someone said, like, when did you really know? There's a hard question to ask because it's not a question that I could ask or answer in one sentence of like, this is when the light bulb. It might have been the case for some people, but for me, it was a much longer process to learn about myself and to be able to articulate it, because that's why I kept the journal, was so that I could articulate my thoughts and my feelings, because then I could look back at it. They say a short list is better than a long memory. I got a mind like a trap. But if I would go back, say, and look back 6 to 12 months, writing down things from 6 to 12 months ago, and this wasn't War and Peace, but it was very detailed, very concise, very accurate, not humiliating, and it wasn't a diary, but I definitely had no problem writing down exactly what was going through my mind. What was I feeling? How did those feelings play a role in my decisions around my managing risk? Buys and sells, longs and shorts, commodities and stocks. What was I feeling? Why was I feeling that way? Because then you could see the folly of it. Like, I want to be part of the cool kids, and the cool kids are making money and I'm not. So I'm going to try to do what they're doing. It's certainly one way to start in small bits and pieces, but ultimately you kind of have to find your own way and find what works for you. When you do that too, I can say that the part of the process of becoming a success at it was that not only did I have a strong inner voice, by the way, everyone get a free copy of the audiobook version of The Inner Voice of Trading. The link is in the description. I give it away. Having the strong inner voice was one part of it, but also having the intestinal fortitude to know that my day will come. Losing money in the short run, it is what it is. It doesn't say anything about me. Having the discipline, I wanted to become more, not addicted, but I wanted to make sure that each day I was exercising my discipline, because that to me was also a sign of maturity. And then doing that day after Friday's close, I'd say, like, okay, I just did that for a whole week. It's kind of like being on a diet or going to jiu-jitsu class, this and that, and exercising that muscle that Andrew Huberman talks about in your brain of wanting, doing the things that you don't want to do. That was really the leading indicator of my success, because then my confidence grew, because you can trade really, really well and be down 2% for the week. Like, trading well and making money and trading well and losing money is still trading well. And that was another thing I had to learn, is like, if you follow all your rules and your rules have positive expected value, just because you don't have a win, it's like when I spoke with Annie Duke on the podcast, we were saying, like, you could play the hand right and still lose. That you have imperfect information, you might have incomplete information. So that's why, I just took it in stride. I never became emotionally invested in the outcome of something that I couldn't control. All I could control was my own behavior. But I knew I was making attempts, again, with imperfect information and perhaps incomplete information on an outcome that was uncertain. So there's a certain emotional intelligence that goes with that. How do you perceive risk? What does risk mean to you? How do you live with that level of uncertainty? Some people don't like it. That's why they can't be patient, because they always have to be moving. There's kinetic energy, there's mental energy. They can't stand the uncertainty. But that, to me, was part of it. And so that's why it definitely took probably 6 months for a lot of these kind of aha moments to kind of ping, 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 ricochet with myself in my brain. All the while, I'm writing it down inside my book, and then it's coalescing. And then over time, I remember distinctly doing this because I had bought a book at B. Dalton, which was a bookseller, or Walden Books. I went to the Barnes & Noble. It's like 81st and Broadway, and you were able to buy like these hardcover notebooks which were, journals. And they were probably at the time like $5, maybe $10. So they were kind of more permanent than just like a spiral bound notebook, which, is certainly good enough. And so as things were coalescing for me, what I was doing is, and a lot of coaches, we certainly advocate this too. Rewrite the things, reframe things and rewrite them, because that means clarity. Then you can kind of go back to that, and that can kind of become your personal mission statement. So as this stuff was coalescing for me, I was rewriting it and re-summarizing things in these longer paragraphs about like who I was and what I was doing in the markets. And I could see the evolution that I was kind of coming into my own. I'm a strong advocate, being that I have a notebook sitting right in front of me. I don't know if you can see it here, but this is a notebook of mine. This one actually J.C. Peretz gave me. And, I use it almost every day. All my most important stuff gets written in here, even if it's just like a one-off like reminder, blah, blah, blah. I write it down. I had found that by writing it out, right, because I'm a visual learner, so that helped me learn. But it also helped me get more clear. Like if I could I express myself to myself in my own writing and then remember what the hell it was that I was trying to convey and read it back to myself. And if there was a disconnect, then I would put more time, not meditating proper, but thinking about that and saying, like, maybe I was onto something here. Like what's around all of that? Always thinking about like the two payoffs to every trade, the emotional and the psychological and the emotional, right? Because I look at those very similarly. So there is all that. And that's why I think a lot of people don't make it, right? They don't make it in life. They don't make it in jiu-jitsu. They don't make it in trading, is because the sheer level of persistence and determination that you need, which is something you might have picked up on since I've started speaking, on this episode, is you can't let self-doubt creep in, because if you're still struggling and you're still kind of panning for gold, it just means you haven't gotten to the point yet of discovery where something has clicked for you. There's no reason to give up. It's not because it doesn't exist. It just means you haven't found it yet. For a lot of people who watch the show and listen to me, what they realize is like it isn't about the trading. It's about the people. It's about yourself. So the more you learn about yourself, the more quickly I think you're going to kind of come to a solution. And then you got to, shit or get off the pot. You got to actually take the risk and be kind of that way. So I feel like that's the best way for you to, think about evolving yourself as a trader, is do a lot more study for yourself and then kind of figure out, where are you making progress and where are you not? Because there will be a high tide and a low tide for your progress. You see what I'm saying? So that's not a long-winded way, but it's hard to answer that question in a one-sentence answer, because the evolution is really what was compelling, not because of any one particular light bulb. So keep that in mind and be easy on yourself. That doesn't mean quit, and it doesn't mean be lame, and it doesn't mean take a day off. It just means that this is a hard thing to do. The IBJJF, which is the governing body of jiu-jitsu, suggests, and they publish this number, that 85% of the people who walk in the front door to try jiu-jitsu never get to their first promotion, which is blue belt. 85% attrition. Then even people, once they get to blue, the next level up is purple. Only a fraction of those blues get to purple. And I think trading is a lot like that, in that there's so much kind of rejection and there's so little that there's no one there to pat you on the back. There's no one there to congratulate you. There's no one to say, hey man, good job, keep persisting. I tend to be very vocal and verbal with, the people I teach, both in trading and jiu-jitsu, because that feedback mechanism is very rewarding. And it doesn't mean like you can't throw out empty compliments just for the sake of doing it. But when you see people putting in the effort, you want to appreciate that and recognize them, because a lot of times that can help with the motivation. You stay motivated, you stay disciplined. Next thing you know, you're building your confidence, and confidence is so much a part of it. I'll share with you, you go to jiu-jitsu, you don't get beat up, but you don't know what you're doing. So you kind of get beat up, but not bullied, beat up. You know what I'm saying? And it's very discouraging, because you're like, man, I don't see the moves coming. I don't know the attacks. If I don't know what their attack could possibly be, I'm in no position to defend stuff. And I'm constantly getting taken down and constantly getting swept. I can't pass anyone's guard. There's really nothing good here. But I show up every day. And I always tell people, like, just go to class. How'd you get your black belt? Well, just go to class. Don't think about it. Just go to class. Get on the mat, tie the belt. If you don't feel like sparring, Pahada, no problem. Sit out, but at least you're in the room. You quit when you lose when you quit. And trading is very much like that. The persistence and determination, which is kind of like in our Bill of Rights, you know, you know, it's in all the amendments of the Constitution, is like persistence and determination means so much for personal success. So just don't quit. Do a little bit at a time. If it's starting to become too much, you can back off a little bit, but do a little bit every day and learn a lot about yourself. Don't think that doesn't matter. Because if you're listening to people, and especially, if they're peacocking and telling you about all their high rates of return and all the millions that they've made, I celebrate that. But just realize that some people are born with a good sense of timing, and they're born with a good sense of, they just get it quicker. There's some people who are, quick studies, and that's the way it works. You might be a quick study in certain things. Maybe you're not a quick study in trading. It doesn't mean that you're never going to become a good trader. So everyone kind of moves at their own pace. They have acceleration, they have deceleration, right? But as long as you keep moving forward at any pace, you're making progress, even if you can't see it. I needed to write it down, even though I could remember it, because I wanted to have a certain integrity with myself and be able to go back and see exactly what I was feeling at a certain time. Has that changed? Has the criteria that delivered me those emotional responses around my trading changed? Has my view of myself changed? So it gets very deep, but I was willing to do the work and be kind of like very, very honest with myself, because I wanted to have integrity with myself. I never really thought too much of people who were bullshit artists and con men. And they weren't con men in a criminal sense, but I knew that they were talking shit. So I don't want to, I never wanted to be that way with myself. Like, you know what we do here in my office? We deal with deception, not self-deception. Like that. Another movie reference. The same movie, mind you. So, I love you all. You're probably doing better than you think. You're still in it. You're not quitting. You're that white belt who's still going to go every day. You don't know when your blue belt is coming, but just keep going, because a lot of it is showing up and putting in the time. And I believe that. I really believe that the more time you put in, the more self-realization you will get. And that self-realization, that self-knowledge, really has a lot to do with you understanding your own behavior. Behavior predicts where you end up. What is trading? It's behavioral adding risk, behavioral removing risk, and it's behavioral in the sense that you're on a diet of risk. What's your R? Right? Do you add more risk when it makes sense, which isn't greed, it's just financial abundance, right? So all of that kind of came through a lot of trial and error, a lot of self-realization, right? That's what makes this content very relatable, is that you're all thinking about this. It's not about moving averages or breakouts or, 1 minute bars or whatever. It's whatever works for you. There is no one way. So if I can try to help you discover better who you are, the easier it is for you to kind of figure out what are the tools that you will need to become the trader that you're trying to become. That becomes much easier. To me, it's a lot harder if you're like, well, let me buy this guy's course, and then I'm going to buy this guy's course, and none of it ever worked. Well, that's why I don't sell courses on certain styles, because there's no guarantee. Even if you can learn it intellectually, there is no guarantee that you'll actually be able to pull it off. But if I can help you become a better version of yourself around managing risk, the tools and the choices that you can make it becomes so much easier. Most people do it the other way around. They see a famous guy, they're like, let me take his class. I can't go wrong. Look how successful he is. Then you look at the stuff and you're like, I can't do this. This doesn't feel good. And so, like they say in management, at that point, you either have to change the man or you got to change the man. How much personal growth are you willing to go through in order to be like that? Or are you going to be more mature about it, take a step back and say, I can appreciate that this person, this is what I was going through at the beginning, is making money this way, that's not a good emotional fit for me. It's like having chemistry with a person. Doesn't mean that the trading strategy doesn't work, and it doesn't mean that it can't work for other people. It's just not a good fit for me based on how I feel about myself, based how I feel right now about being right or wrong, and based how I feel, again, emotionally and financially about making and losing money. So it's very complicated. And I think that's why there's so much attrition, both in jiu-jitsu and in trading, is that it's hard. It's a slog. It's if you have that type of temperament, now saying that out loud, I should take that back. It's not a slog. It's a slog if you call it a slog. But to me, it was a journey in self-discovery because if you remember, I won't rehash it all here, I was tired of blue-collar despair, man. I grew up in a Raymond Carver short story, and I just working on farms, caddying golf bags, having a landscaping company, my own, waiting tables, caddying. I was making a ton of cash. I was making like I was making thousands and thousands of dollars in the early 80s cash, which kind of would be a lot of money now for the same type of work. So I was swimming in it, but I realized I didn't want to exchange my time for money, right? I wanted intellectual property. I'll get into that story another time, but that was absolutely something that I said out loud. I remember exactly where I was when I said it and why I said it and how I got that. That'll be the cliffhanger. We'll get to that another episode. Otherwise, know that I love everybody here. Please like and subscribe. There's links below where you can reach out and talk to me and suggest a topic or get involved in the conversation. I appreciate you all and what you're going through very much. Keep at it. A little bit every day. Make 0.5% every day, and self-improvement's going to do wonders for your trading career. Thanks very much for being here, folks. I'll see you next time.